Hiya everyone, and welcome to Blood Red Podcast with me, Ian Doyle. That's enough northern accents for today. Joining me...
Oh, you actually started?
Yeah, exactly, we started. Joining me today
I am just updating our followers to this.
Full-time Liverpool correspondent and full-time ignoramus, Paul Gorst. Hiya.
I'm good, Ian. I know you didn't ask that, but how are you? You good?
I am very northern today.
Did you enjoy your weekend without Liverpool games?
I very much did enjoy my weekend without Liverpool games.
Been to the zoo, I've heard.
Yes, that was good. Yeah, the St. Helens, as we otherwise call it. So yeah, Liverpool obviously started the football season, haven't they?
Yes.
Premier League is up and running. We've had enough of all that phony nonsense for the large part of the summer, and now we can crack on with actual games.
Yeah, I think it should be a thing where the champions begin every season on a Friday night and get the season underway at home. That should just be like a little benefit of winning the league, I think, because it was good. Meant that we had a free weekend.
Yes, well, I was working Saturday, even Sunday. It meant that Theo had a free weekend, basically. Yeah, and
yes.
now he's away anyway, isn't he? Yeah,
but it was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a strange night, wasn't it? You know, with a lot happening off the pitch. The Diogo Jota tributes, which I thought were all fantastically observed and beautifully executed, and the Antoine Semenyo allegations, which a 47-year-old man has since been arrested and bailed, hasn't he, today? So there was a lot happening around the game, and then the match itself was pretty wild, wasn't it? 4-2. So yeah, it was a busy all night at Anfield, but almost the good old slap across the face that the Premier League is back. Did you enjoy your evening?
No. Anyway, I'll tell you what I do enjoy. It's
on.
NordVPN. They're our sponsors. And to get the best discounts off our NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. Don't forget, there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description box. I mean, obviously, I did enjoy it on Friday when the game had finished and we all got to go home. So, yeah, in conversation now with Paul. Just probably we've made enough hints at this, haven't we, over the last couple of weeks that things are changing. The Blood Red podcast, the change is coming. Whether it's good or bad, that's up to other people to decide. But there'll be some new. Well, I say there's new empty spaces, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, what do we say? It's a restructure of the company, isn't it? So we shall wait with bated breath how it impacts things on our podcast. So yeah, we've just got to see what happens and try and continue to deliver 2 weekly Blood Red podcasts.
Yeah, so basically enjoy us while you can. I think is probably the best day to put that. Now, obviously, I did enjoy Friday. The Premier League's back. There are a lot of people who enjoy watching football, and they would have enjoyed watching Liverpool win 4-2 against Bournemouth. You've obviously touched on the game there early on. What was your overall view? Did it kind of back up what we've kind of thought about Liverpool throughout the summer, that possibly they're definitely not anywhere near up to speed as they were last season at the respective stage, but that's understandable because they've got so many new players.
Yeah, that's understandable to an extent, but also Arne Slot has had the full complement of players to work with since the opening days of pre-season, haven't he? But obviously they've had it completely thrown into disarray by what happened with Diogo Jota, and it's going to be sort of perversely fascinating to see how that manifests over the course of the season. It's still a group of players who are still grieving and mourning, really, for the mate, isn't it? So that will develop at some stage, and you could see it in Mohamed Salah's eyes, really, when he was celebrating in front of the Kop at the end. What it meant to him and what Jota meant to him and the team as a whole. So that's something that Liverpool are going to have to work through on the pitch in a sporting sense. As a playing staff, as a squad, as a coaching team. So I think that's going to be the sort of big question mark over what Liverpool are able to do this season in terms of the actual nuts and bolts, tactical and the strategy and stuff. They just look a little bit too easy to get at the moment. They lose the ball in areas that aren't dangerous, and within seconds that they're on the back foot and conceding big chances, and as it turned out on Friday, goals. I don't think Bournemouth had too many other opportunities, did they really? But scored with 2 fantastically executed counter-attacks. The second one in particular, it's just a ball from Salah to Szoboszlai. It's just slightly behind them, which 9 times out of 10 is not a big deal. Bournemouth can counter, and normally you would have enough behind the ball to cover for that. But for whatever reason, at the moment, they're just a little bit too open. And it was evident in pre-season. I noticed it in the Hong Kong game against AC Milan, but it's one of those where you think pre-season, early doors, it's something that they'll work on and something that, won't be an issue when the proper stuff gets going. But it was certainly evident against Palace, and it was definitely, the cause of the concessions on Friday. And I've seen a stat on Match Today, which was Liverpool have now conceded as many goals to counter-attacks this season as they did across the entirety of last season, which is incredible, really. So, yeah, work to be done. I think McAllister getting up to speed will help. I think Ryan Gravenberch coming back will be the big sort of indicator that perhaps these early issues are going to be resolved. But I think having the Newcastle game isn't until next Monday now, is it? So Liverpool have had from Friday to Monday between games. I think that time on the training pitch for Slot and his coaches is going to be needed, really, to iron out these issues. And for all the attacking brilliance that we saw, 4 goals, 4 different scorers, it was a concern of how easy Bournemouth were able to get at Liverpool, I thought, with those counter-attacks.
Well, it's kind of, people have been complaining about it, but it is understandable in the sense that you mentioned Gravenberch and McAllister, but it's not just about those two. There's a centre forward who's just come in and he's still learning the defensive side of Liverpool's game. Yeah. You've got an attacking midfielder who's a completely different, we mentioned this in the podcast last week, completely different attacking midfielder to Szoboszlai in Florian Wirtz, and he's getting used to it. You've got 2 wingers who were kind of told last season, certainly Mohamed Salah, as we know, don't bother too much about the defending, but behind them, you've also got 2 new fullbacks who are still trying to work their way into the team in the way that Liverpool want to play.
Yeah.
And certainly in Frimpong, a player who hardly played at right back during the summer anyway. Yeah. And Kirkes, who in that particular game, he was up against his former club, so he's probably quite keen to impress and was probably a bit nervous and went too far the other way, and both of them ended up being substituted on the hour. Although Slot did say that Frimpong had a bit of a hamstring issue, so we'll have to wait and see on that. So it could easily have been different that game. Say, for example, if you'd have played Robertson and you'd have played Conor Bradley if he was fit, and if Gravenberch. So it's a lot went out of the team.
Yeah, the goals they conceded, the fullbacks weren't on the pitch, really, to be fair, the new fullbacks.
Well, then that's another problem, isn't it? Is that they both came down certainly one of them came down the right, and that was
Endo. Was when Endo was on,
right back, and then
Liverpool played with three right backs on the night, didn't exactly. He? So, yeah,
and you had Ibrahima Konate, who individually didn't have a particularly good game anyway.
Yeah. So it's all fine tuning, isn't it? But that issue is there for Liverpool. How exposed they're looking a bit too easily. Counter attacks and turnovers and transitions, and it's a bit easy to get at Liverpool. Certainly a lot easier than it was last year. And yeah, Gravenberch will help inevitably, as will McAllister when he's 100%. But yeah, there are things to work on. A new full-back pairing will take time to develop. I thought Kirkes in particular struggled, certainly first half, when Semenyo rolled him a couple of times, and he picks up the booking for the late challenge where he's clearly keen to impress. And look, he's a young player, isn't he? You don't expect him to be the finished article straight away. And I think having Robertson alongside him for that competition for the season ahead is going to be really important for Kirkes, to be fair. And I think that's something he mentioned when he joined. So I think Liverpool are okay generally there. But yeah, I think these are just the early season kinks that you have to work out, don't you? And you'd back on a slot to see what the problems are and fix them over the course of the next few weeks. But yeah, the issues are there, and you can't get away from them. But on the other hand, they're looking quite fluid in an attacking sense, aren't they? I thought Ekitike was really good, takes his goal well again, and there was a touch in the second half there, but he sort of holds it up and back heels inverts, and the Kop were in awe with that, aren't they? Weren't they? And gets an assist as well for Gakpo, who took his goal well. Chiesa's volley. I'm going to come on to Chiesa, I guess, and on Salah with his obligatory opening day goal contribution. So yeah, pluses and minuses, I guess, which was the same story for the Community Shield, but they are up and running at least. And yeah, we'll obviously talk a bit more about the Newcastle game on Friday, but that is already looking like a huge game to me.
Well, I said that at the start. I said that these fixtures aren't particularly kind to Liverpool. Bournemouth, Bournemouth, don't forget, we're playing with 3 new defenders and a new goalkeeper. So Liverpool should have been looking to score goals. Obviously, they ended up with the 4, but Newcastle away, then Arsenal at home. We'll come on to Arsenal a bit later on, just when we look at the first weekend as a whole. That they're tough games anyway. And I know Newcastle have got their own issues, but by the same token, they have quite a big motivation to do quite well against Liverpool next Monday. And Arsenal we know all about. So Alisson spoke, didn't he, after the game? He spoke to, was it NBC Brazil or something like that? Yeah,
it was a good point, actually.
Yeah, where he said no one's talking about how difficult it is to... I mean, no, we've been talking about it for quite some time. But I think it's all very well saying Liverpool have spent that much amount of money on new players. But these are players who, possibly unlike some of the other clubs that spent a lot of money on all of their players, I mean, looking at Arsenal, is that it would be easier for them to kind of integrate those players into the team, into the squad. Liverpool have been forced into some, such as Frimpong, and obviously with the decisions that's been made with the forwards. That's tough, and we always know from having watched football for a long time, it's a lot easier to get a team to set up and defend than it is for them to go out and attack, because you have to get those partnerships. But if you defend, you could technically just get 11 people and just stick them all behind the ball, and that's your defending. Liverpool are never going to do that. So it is going to be probably just as hard to learn the defensive way of things as it would be for any other team to learn the attacking thing. Because, as you mentioned, they've looked good going forward. But are they looking good going forward because they're, like sacrificing some of the defensive solidity that they had at the start of last season? Because I think they only conceded 2 goals in the first 7 Premier League games last season, and conceded 2 within 70-odd minutes of this season. So that's the balance that Slot's going to have to find, and he knows that anyway. He's funny enough, he's a manager who knows what it's like to try and defend a title, because he had this. He obviously, I know it's a different league, but he had this with Feyenoord, and the Wirtz made mention of it, because obviously when it was Bayer Leverkusen 2 years ago, we spoke to him after the Bilbao game, and he said, "Look, it's even more difficult trying to defend a title. I know this." I think they ended up finishing second, didn't they, last season? But they were a long way behind Bayern Munich last season, Bayer Leverkusen. So it does make you a target. But again, the interesting thing is that because there's so many new players, they don't really have that pressure as such, do they? It's some of the other players, and that's what I think these newer ones are going to have to look at. The likes of Alisson and Van Dijk and Salah, they're going to be leaning on them a little bit. But as you mentioned before, there's the Jota situation as well. Whereas these newer players didn't really, obviously they knew of him, possibly some of them were playing at other clubs up at country level or against him, but didn't know him the same way that the players were already there knew. So it's all these little things that are just going to make it that little bit more difficult. Some of them, obviously, Liverpool decided to make these new signings, but they're going to make it more difficult to defend the title than it otherwise normally would. So I saw all these people at the start of the season saying, Liverpool are massively the team to beat. They get Isak and they're going to walk the league, that kind of thing. I never thought that at all, because just forgetting, hang on, they've got 2 new defenders that are completely new, almost completely new attack, and they're dealing with these other things as well.
Yeah, it's this idea of transfers always being net positives, isn't it? And you put these players into the team and it looks great on paper, but you've got to sort of work it out and figure it out how you work together and stuff like that. And I mean, it's slightly skewed, Liverpool's transfer business, in that 3 of them are goalkeepers who aren't going to be playing every week. So it looks a little bit of a higher volume than it actually is. But, they've signed 8 players now. Giovanni Leone's obviously confirmed on Friday. And they've sold 7 so far. Ben Doak will be the next. So it's 8 players in. It's going to be 8 players out at least. Could even be, 10 players in, 10 players out by the end of the window. So it's quite the turnover for a squad who cantered to the Premier League title, really, didn't he? 10 points. Won it by 10 points and basically had the month of May off. And so it's a strange level of change and transition for a club who are clearly doing things right on the pitch and off the pitch. So it's I think that's going to be an interesting one, really. But yeah, I mean, you're right in terms of Frimpong. That was pretty much a reactive one for Liverpool because Trent has gone. They didn't necessarily want to lose Trent, but once they did, they think that Frimpong is the ideal, alternative. Kirk has been brought in with a view to the long term, hasn't he? Had a really good season last year at Bournemouth, but he's still only 21. His best years are ahead of him. Florian Wirtz, maybe opportunistic 2 points. Maybe Liverpool felt they couldn't necessarily always go for a player of that profile, but things are sort of changing slightly, and they've managed to fend off Bayern Munich and Man City for him. And Ekatike was probably something that they felt was an upgrade on Darwin Núñez. So you can see the thinking in all of these transfers, but it's still early going. They've only played one competitive match together, haven't they? So, yeah, I think it will take some time before Liverpool are sort of pairing in the, this idea that all these players will come in to improve the team. But how long that takes is probably going to be down to Slot, isn't it, and the players themselves. So, yeah, it's I mean, what would represent a good opening for you this season for Liverpool? Because you look at it last year, how many did they win?
Well,
that's 10 of the first 11 or something.
They're never going to do anything like that.
But,
that'd be ridiculous.
Sorry, in terms of like getting to the international break, they've obviously got Newcastle away next and then Arsenal. So 2 huge games. They've already got 3 points. What is a sort of a really good return by the break?
The interesting thing is the respective games last year that had taken 5 points because they beat Bournemouth at home, drew at Newcastle, and drew with Arsenal. Well, they were winning 3-2 at Newcastle with about minutes to go, and they were winning 2-0 against Arsenal in a game that technically didn't really matter that much. So that's a bit of a tough one. But I mean, I think if they have 5 points, it's funny. I was looking at it just as you were talking, then thinking, well, this is a tough start. But even if they don't get generally good results in these games against Newcastle and Arsenal, you wouldn't have expected that anyway. These are tough games. They're going to do 2 of the toughest games they'll have all season. So maybe in a way it might be good that I've got them out of the way, because we've said about Newcastle got their own problems. I think Arsenal, because of the business they've done and the way that they've done it and the fact that they've kept most of the rest of the squad available, I think they're the ones that should be looking to start pretty strongly. I think they've got tough games, but as we saw, they obviously beat United. That you can get these games at good times, and I think they might look at going to Liverpool at the moment as not a bad time. Going to United at that moment is not a bad time. So it swings and roundabouts in that regard. But I think if they end up with 5 points again, I think you'd be reasonably pleased, I think. Yeah,
the Newcastle game is going to be huge, isn't it? They are going to be, the supporters, are going to be right up for that after Liverpool coming for their star man. And as of yet, he remains there, doesn't he? But that's been a real saga for them, and there's quite the frustration in terms of their feeling towards him, and what do you think about Liverpool as a result. So they're going to be well up for that. So Liverpool have got to stand up to it, haven't they? Monday night, first home game of the season at St James's Park, was always going to be an incredible atmosphere anyway, so it's going to be ratcheted up even more. So big test of Liverpool's character, that. We'll see what happens this week if there are any developments over Alexander Isak. Not personally expecting anything, certainly until the game's done and dusted.
Yeah,
but obviously he doesn't travel there, does he, with the team at the weekend? Left out of the game at Aston Villa, and then the supporters are calling him a greedy, at full time. So
that was interesting, calling greedy. Greedy for what? Because it can't be money. They'd be greedy for more trophies because he's probably got more chance of winning stuff at Liverpool and Newcastle.
And something, it was a chant that Liverpool fans sang at Sterling, wasn't it, 10 years ago?
That turned out badly for him, didn't it, Sterling? He didn't win anything at Man City.
No, but yeah, was it just another sort of nail in the coffin of Isak's Newcastle career? It's just, from the outside looking in, I just find it a long way back for him now. Eddie Howe, I say Eddie Gray. Eddie Howe was spoken about.
Eddie Gray, that would be a good story.
Spoken a lot about reintegrating him, but
he has to, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, it just feels like a long way back, doesn't it? Even with our, we take off the sort of Liverpool specs for this story. It just feels like, okay, you're not going to sign a better striker than him, so keeping him technically means that they're not worse off at the end of the window. But having behaved the way he's, reportedly behaved behind the scenes and whatever's gone on there, I think he's cited broken promises, hasn't he, over the lack of a contract offer. Does that make them look weak if they do hold on to him and they have to try and reintegrate him? Liverpool went through it themselves, didn't they, with Luis Suarez, but it's all getting a bit unsavoury there at the moment.
Well, we have one or two questions. I was going to deal with Isak a bit later on, but we'll do it now. Matt Stanley has asked, and I'm just going to reword this. We've had a pretty good no idiots, shall we say, or disruptors policy for a while. Is Isak being one of these? And do you think Liverpool might, would he might be too much trouble for Liverpool, and should they swerve him in terms of his character?
No, I wouldn't say that. We don't know what what was being said behind the scenes, but he clearly feels as though he was deserving of a new contract, which never came because I think it was Amanda Staveley when she was there at the club, sort of promised him a new one, and then Paul Mitchell, the sporting director, came in, and with Newcastle, this is just sort of what I've read from various North East-based reporters over the summer, with Newcastle PSR issues sort of still bubbling away. Paul Mitchell felt that there was no point giving Alexander Isak an improved contract when he already had 3.5 years left on it, because that essentially would be losing more money at a time when they're trying to cut the costs. So that is why he hasn't had a new contract sort of tabled to his agents. So he feels maybe a bit let down by that. Depending on who you believe, he told Newcastle a while ago that he wanted to leave, and was only sort of publicly agitated for it over the last month. So I wouldn't necessarily think he's too much trouble. I think there are issues behind the scenes there. Don't think anyone's particularly covered themselves in glory from the outside looking in, but I don't think that's going to impact his behaviour if he came to Liverpool. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that personally.
Just going back to the game, there were two things that happened outside of the actual action on the pitch. One of them, a bit unsavoury. We'll deal with that now. Obviously, Antoine Semenyo, he complained of being subject to racist abuse to the officials. The game got stopped, and obviously at the time we were like, what's going on here? And it didn't take long for it to come out what had actually happened. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our news team have reported today that the 47-year-old man who was he arrested on the suspicion of alleged racist abuse has been bailed as a result. Yeah, it was all very Tory, wasn't it? And we spoke to Van Dijk after the game, and he called it an absolute disgrace and said that he and the club would help out Semenyo and however they could if he reached out to them, and that was all good to hear. It's something you obviously never want to hear. Certainly don't want to hear it at Anfield. It's very rare, isn't it? Stuff like that happening at Anfield. And I don't know if this is the right phrasing, but I was quite glad in a way that it was just the work of one idiot who has hopefully gets a lifetime ban now on the back of it.
Well, he's been banned from every stadium in the UK. I'm not sure how long that lasts. And also, he's can't go within a mile of a designated football stadium, which I would assume would be Anfield for a start.
Good. I mean, it was caught on camera, wasn't he? He obviously in the sort of disabled section and almost moves up further closer to the pitch to give Semenyo a piece of his mind. And I mean, fair play to Semenyo for having the mental strength to play on and haven't put in a great performance. The questions over whether when stuff like this happens, players have every right to down tools and say, look, this has happened to me, and essentially you could sort of halt the game and walk off and all that sort of stuff. It opens up a total new box of possibilities, doesn't it? Just shocking, really. You don't expect it, but like I say, it does appear to be the work of one lone idiot who has now talked himself into a lifetime ban. So good in that sense, and just something you absolutely don't want to see. And fair play to Liverpool and the police, who seem to have handled it very swiftly.
And then on the other side, you're looking at the tributes for Diogo Jota, not just before the game, but obviously during at the 20th minute. I mean, Areola, the Bournemouth manager, said that he said, we noticed it, you couldn't help but not feel it and not be affected by it. And then there was the situation at the end when Chiesa scores the third goal, and then they sing his chant all the way through to Salah scoring. And then before the game then finishes, they break out into the Jota chant, and the players go up to the Kop, and then Salah's the one who's left by himself. He was in tears, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was, yeah. It was very powerful, that, wasn't it? Just sort of doing the baby shark celebration, and then just the emotion of it all for Mo and the rest of the team. I thought the mosaics looked amazing, really. Couldn't necessarily see the Jota one from where we were in the press box, but watched the highlights back when I got in, and there's a very, very powerful image of the team sort of in arms on the centre circle, and you can see the mosaic behind them, and obviously got the Portuguese influence as well with the green, and it just looked really good. and full credit to the club and the volunteers who helped out to make that look as good as it
family was there to see it as well.
Yeah, we seen Ruther and didn't we the Jota's wife in the mix zone after the game. You know, just felt so sorry for her. You know, so helpless and hopeless the situation that her and her family found themselves in. Alison Becker went over and gave it a big hug and had a chat with her. Virgil van Dijk did the same, and Federico Chiesa's wife as well came over and gave it a big hug. And yeah, she needs all the support that the club can give her at the moment, doesn't she? And there was a brilliant flag on the front of the Kop that sort of named her and the 3 children and just said, what was it? You'll never walk alone. And yeah, you know, it is a bit of a slogan and a catchphrase and whatever else, but at times like this, you realise what it all means. And yeah, I think the club have handled this all as well as they can, really. I think everything they've done every step of the way is just a real sort of reminder of what Jota meant to the team, the players, his colleagues and his friends, across all departments of the club, by the way. So yeah, and I think Liverpool are going to carry this with them across, well, forever really, but obviously throughout the season at certain points it's going to be we're going to get moments like Salah in front of the Kop, aren't we, where it's all a bit overcome with emotion.
Because they're going to have to, there will, as you mentioned, there will be moments where it will possibly become a bit too much, for want of a better phrase, and then they are going to have to stick together because, you know, when people grieve, they don't all do it in exactly the same way.
Yeah, it's not linear, is it? It doesn't just...
You can't just go, all right, I'll stop now.
Yeah,
Like, and then somebody else says, no,
transfer window.
It doesn't work like that, as anybody who's lost people know. That's how it works, unfortunately. Now, it did all mean that the game itself, the atmosphere, was a lot more intense and emotional for obvious reasons, but than you would normally have for a game against Bournemouth. And I know it was on a Friday night and the first game of the season, but you even had Slot afterwards saying that for the last 6-7 minutes, obviously when Chiesa gets the goal, it was just incredibly loud. And it was just, it was like, you know, this is the first game, guys.
Yeah, like I say, I think I wrote this in the verdict. It was a night of high emotion, wasn't it? And that's what Anfield does best. That's why people fall in love with the club, because of the emotion of it all that it runs on, and when it's all in its glory. And you've got, you know, obviously the Jota tributes, and then you've got the sort of the anger of the allegations towards Semenyo, and, you know, the game itself was back and forth and real high energy, you know, 6 goals scored, and just everything about the evening was just very sort of top end of the emotional spectrum, wasn't it? So yeah, I mean, there can't be too many more games like that this season, or evenings like that. I hope not anyway, because it was a difficult match report to write.
Yeah, we thought at 2-0, this is only be straightforward.
Yeah, nice and straightforward.
It didn't work out like that.
But yeah, it's you know, it was a great advertisement, as they say, and yeah, Liverpool up and running, but there's not going to be, you know, I think that will sort of feature at the end of the season when you're talking about, you know, games and memorable moments and stuff. I think that game is going to feature quite prominently, actually.
And thanks, no small part, to Federico Chiesa. Obviously, you spoke to Virgil van Dijk after the game. I say obviously because he always stops. Yeah. And you could get the sense from him and the other players that they were just so made up for Chiesa, because he's obviously had a bit of a tough time with injuries and not being involved, and, you know, not quite getting up to the intensity of the Premier League. But one thing that nobody ever doubted was his quality on the ball, and you saw that with his finish.
It was brilliant to finish, wasn't it? He sort of cuts across it. The fact that he hasn't really got much of a running start to run in and volley it. It's almost just drops to him, doesn't it? And he takes it so well with his technique. And what a moment! You know, he had a difficult season last year, didn't he? And I remember in Leipzig, we were talking to Slot, and it was all becoming a bit strange as to why he wasn't being involved. And Slot was essentially admitting that he couldn't handle the intensity. And he never really got up to speed, and that was in the October. And, you know, he starts that game against Brighton, and bit of a sort of meandering performance. Difficult when a lot of changes are made, but
he had a tough one at Plymouth as well, didn't he? In the FA Cup?
Yeah. And Slot said in May that, you know, he's got a future at the club because he just needs a good pre-season, and he still doesn't get that, does he? He's left off the tour of the United States of Asia, and you're questioning whether this is the end for him. You know, is there just going to be interest from a club in Italy, and he just quietly moves on, and you sort of say, well, chalk it up to a bit of a transfer failure and move on. But maybe this is the one that gives his career lift off.
Do you think they'll keep him? I think they'll keep him now.
I didn't, but I'm almost thinking...
It's not just even down just to the goal. I just think it's the whole way. They haven't got that many forwards. And
I think that's it now, isn't it? More than necessarily... I mean, you can obviously give you stuff like that on Friday night, but they need to keep him just because of the numbers, essentially, because, you know, Ben Doak's going to leave, isn't he? And
well, it looks like he's more or less gone now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
We've been reporting that for a few days now. Bournemouth, 25 million.
Yeah. So he's going to leave. We imagine that will be confirmed, could even be confirmed before people have caught this pod on YouTube. So, you know, Liverpool have got 4 now for the 3 positions, and then Rio and Gamoa sort of supplying the backup, whereas last season he had 6 international forwards across the season, and when Chiesa comes in and you're thinking, can he get up to speed, and you're sort of casting your mind back to when he was at his best at Juventus and Italy, and you know that's the player you've got in your mind, I guess, when you're thinking about these players, you know, these 6 players. But now you're sort of thinking, coming off the year he's just had, he's got a lot of things to prove, but Liverpool probably need to keep him because they're not going to be able to bring in 2, I guess, in the window, because we know that they already need 1, and Alexander Isak remains the sort of the front runner for that, and he's going to cost a significant amount of money, which might...
A derisory £110 million. Yeah. They bottled it with that.
Slap in the face, only offering 110 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they will keep him, just based on the fact that, you know, you'd rather have him in your ranks than not, if you know what I mean. You know, and I think this could be the opportunity now for him to really kick on. I hope so anyway, because I think some people thought that when he scored in the Carabao Cup final, it didn't quite work. But, you know, having a moment like that and the cop with the song and all that, you know, the fallout from it, I think it has to sort of lead to something now a bit more prolonged and a bit sustained, and, you know, start to show why you've got the reputation you have, certainly in Italy.
We'll do Mark Gay, shall we? And he had an interesting Sunday, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, you didn't see the game, did you? But
no.
He obviously shoves Caicedo into the wall and gets that goal disallowed. But, you know, you've written something about him today. Is there some sort of update, is there, from Oliver Glasner?
The update in that is a typical reaching for a story that probably isn't there, but basically saying, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be picking Eze and by inference Gay for Palace if there are players, but they're not soft. I think he knows, because obviously Isak hasn't been played for a big pick for Newcastle. That's a slightly different situation. I think obviously Gay played against Liverpool in the Community Shield. Had by all accounts a decent game against Chelsea. Besides that,
kept them out, yeah.
And also he had the snub, as it were. Don't think it's a snub, really, is it? I think he's just getting off the pitch.
I didn't see that.
I don't think it is one. And anyway, why would you snub a manager who's just picked you for a? You know, he's not the one that's saying we can sell him or not. That's Steve Parish and the chairman at Palace. So I think that's a deal that gets done. Personally, I think he wants to come, and I think Liverpool will find the money. I think obviously Doak going gives them a little bit more leeway.
Yeah,
I suspect, especially 25 million for a player who they bought for 600,000 3 years ago.
10 senior appearances.
Yeah, and he was never really going to play that often this season. I don't think he would have got some games, but not many. Julian Baxendale, friend of the podcast, though, going back to Isak, has said, neck on the block, do you guys think Isak gets done this window or not?
Yes, I said that last week on the pod, and not much has changed my mind, really. I think we might see some wheels in motion after Monday night, not necessarily Tuesday morning, but I think both parties have perhaps accepted that it might just be best to do things after that's out the way, because that has got the potential to be a bit of a volatile powder keg of an atmosphere. So, yeah, after Tuesday could be some phone calls between the two clubs. But Newcastle no further along, really, in their pursuit of Johan Visser, who, by all accounts, is the Callum Wilson replacement. So, you know, there hasn't even been a name emerged since Sesko.
There will be players out there, but it's whether or not they're going to fit what they want. And that's not Liverpool's fault, is it? That's Newcastle's fault for not particularly having a very good window anyway. And I know we've done several podcasts where we've explained why, but again, that's not Liverpool's problem. I agree. I think Isak will be a Liverpool player as well.
But then you wonder, do Newcastle think he's, it's all a bit awkward and, not the sort of situation you want at the moment. But once the window closes, he's going to eventually play for them again, isn't he? He's not going to sit on his hands for 6 months or a year. So they will be able to bring him back into the fold. And essentially, he's going to be better than anyone they're going to be able to bring in. So they're saving money in that way, and also still got a better striker. I guess you're relying a bit on the powers of persuasion from Eddie Howe. That may be how the way Newcastle's thinking about it, but I do think, Isak will become a Liverpool player, but it's difficult to second guess what might happen in the Newcastle end.
Yeah, obviously Newcastle drew 0-0 at Villa. Saw half an hour of that game when Villa went down to 10, and Newcastle definitely looked like they needed a striker. Let's put it that way. What have you made of the first weekend overall? Tottenham got a win against Brentford. I think Brentford might struggle.
Yeah.
City.
Burnley.
City. Sorry. Forest beat Brentford, didn't they?
Beat Brentford, yeah.
But Brentford will still struggle anyway.
Yeah.
City won at Wolves 4-0.
Tijani Reinders looked really good.
Yeah.
Cherky took his goal really well, yeah. But I think I might say that on Friday's pod. I think City and Chelsea will come out strong because they haven't really been away. So they're still at the sort of competitive match level of fitness and sharpness. Chelsea weren't great yesterday. But I think Palace are a really decent team, to be fair, particularly against the bigger sides. Seem to know how to navigate those sorts of games. City did well. Arsenal looked more of the same. Defensively solid, relying on set pieces. Gyökeres was anonymous.
Did he start?
Yeah.
What were United like? I haven't seen it.
Slightly better going forward. I mean, they could be much worse, but Cunha and Mbeumo had a bit of a go. But Arsenal strong defensively and limited the chances really.
Arsenal title favourites then?
Well, they might be your words for the next 9 months, but they're not mine.
10 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
City will be better as well, I think.
It was just the goalkeeper for the Arsenal's winner. If they'd have had a proper goalkeeper, you'd probably just put. There was an interesting parallel in the second half where David Raya just punches the ball clear and makes no bones about it, and Arsenal get rid of it. Whereas Arsenal scored from that exact type of situation in the first half, where the keeper was just too weak and Calafiori heads it in on the line. And Arsenal just looked like more of the same, which is obviously a very good side. But you wonder if they come up against teams who are a bit more structurally sound than Manchester United, are they going to struggle again for goals? It's obviously early doors, but they didn't look any different from last season, really.
I think that should do us, unless you've got anything else to add.
No, not much going on now, is there? Liverpool don't play for another week, so we've got a lot of downtime.
Well, you might have.
Yeah, to assess the lay of the land. Yeah,
Indeed.
I don't think, we're expecting Mendo to leave. Don't think there'll be much movement on Isak until at least next week.
Could be gay. Something might happen this week, I think.
Yeah, possibly. They put up in talks with Palace last week, was it? Last Monday or Tuesday. So, let's wait and see. But they have signed Leone. We haven't really mentioned him, have we?
No.
£26 million
Probably because
centre-back.
we don't know anything about him, let's be honest.
18-year-old defender from Parma, played 17 games for them last season. Appears to be the next big hope.
I've got to say that there's a lot of big hopes that Liverpool have been linked with in the past couple of years. We've done Levi Colwill, Lenny Yoro went to United, Dean Huijsen obviously went to Real Madrid. So they've obviously been looking for this kind of they haven't said generational talent for Leone, have they? But,
just someone who could be a centre-back in a few years.
It does seem as though it's outside of the normal transfer business for this summer.
Yeah.
Although, by all accounts, he's been bought and he's going to be competing in the squad straight away.
Yeah, they've got no plans to loan him, which is interesting. So that essentially gives them another body at centre-back. I don't think we'll see him until the Community Shield.
That's a bit of a wait.
The Carabao Cup, whenever that gets underway. Scouting reports seem quite positive. People who've seen him a bit more than we have. Rich Garnett was on the pod on Friday and he said he went to watch Parma v Roma last year in Italy and Leone got sent off after half an hour. Which
Good start.
yeah. But generally, I think Liverpool feel as though they've got a really good, potentially young centre back for now and certainly the long term. What was interesting was something we unearthed on Friday is Jarell Kwanzaa's, Liverpool have got a buyback clause on him, haven't they? And also, if he does return, the contract has already been pre-agreed, which is quite interesting.
How does that work?
Well, if he comes back, if Liverpool do exercise that buyback clause, so it's essentially a loan. If you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Which tells you that.
Well, not if he doesn't want to come back.
Well, he might have a choice.
They can't force him.
Which, that tells you that Liverpool obviously rate Kwanzaa really highly. Still think he's got one or two things to iron out in his game. You can do that on someone else's time and potentially bring him back. So, I just thought that was an interesting little nugget.
Speaking of nuggets, no, I'm going to leave that there. When are we on next, producer Ian? Up to us. Oh, it's us just two, isn't it? Yeah. Thursday or Friday. What do we think?
We'll get back to you on that.
Just keep checking on Thursday. See if we're here. If not, we'll be on Friday. Cheerio.